Okay, I'm going to try this. Hi, everyone. We are live streaming and on Zoom. This is amazing technology. So welcome. This is the first class of Discovering Buddhism, How to Develop Bodhichitta. And we have Dr. Don Brown joining us for this module. Hang on. I want to say some things about Don. He is an FPMT certified teacher with over 40 years of experience. So he does want us to participate as much as possible, 100% preferably. So since we are doing this online, if you are joining us through Zoom, there is a chat box where you can leave questions. Donna or I might also leave notes for you in the chat box, so be sure you're checking that chat box on Zoom. If you're streaming and you have questions, I will be posting the About Discovering Buddhism Bodhichitta module information sheet tonight once I get home online. So just go to kadampacenter.org and Discovering Buddhism materials, scroll down to How to Develop Bodhichitta, and you'll find all the information there. My email is on that handout, along with all the information you need for this class. If you do have questions, though, for me or Dawn, please email me on the email that's included on that worksheet. As always, we do need to keep the lights on. We do need to keep power on. So we do accept donations of any amount, and there's lots of different ways to give. On the back of the About the Discovering Buddhism course, there's information of all the different ways you can give. So lots of options there. All right, am I forgetting anything, Don or Donna?
The meditation on equanimity.
Yes, so we will... Oh,
Linda, this is Chip. You've got a really bad echo going on right now.
Yeah, we know because I'm standing too close to Dawn, but I wanted to be in the video.
She's...
Okay, I'm going to try something. Okay, so I've muted my Zoom audio. Are you able to hear me now, Chip? Through other means? Ooh, it's really echoey now. Wow.
Yeah, that's worse.
That's worse.
Well, how about when I talk? Is it bad? Is there an echo when I talk?
Now there's nothing.
Can you hear me? This is Don. Yeah. I don't think so. Oh, Donna's got me muted. Donna's shutting me up. Oh, can you hear me now? Is that real echoey? Hello?
Yeah, Don, you're much better than Linda.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead, Linda. I think you... Did any, I guess there's some people streaming we wouldn't be able to know, but I think we've covered everything.
Yes.
Yeah, the main points.
I'm muting my Zoom audio. I'm going to turn it over to Dawn now.
Okay,
Thanks,
you,
everyone,
Linda.
for your patience.
Yes,
we're going to work through this together.
This is a very exciting moment here where we go virtual. I get to be here for the first virtual. I get to be here for a lot of firsts. Anyway, so welcome to Discovering Buddhism. The title of the class is Bodhichitta, the awakening mind, the mind of enlightenment, the Bodhi mind. Bodhi means awaken and Chitta means mind. So let's see, we've got here a chat. Linda, I may need something. Something popped up, chat at the bottom of my screen.
You don't need to worry about that, Don. That's to the students.
Is that okay?
Donna and I will worry about the chat box.
Okay.
You can
All right. Okay. There's some... Okay, so here we are. Back to the business at hand. So anyway, let's... this is a really wild time in, I think, most people's lives. No, you know, I don't want to use the word too many times. I'm only going to use it one time this whole time. But unprecedented is the word you keep hearing. Unprecedented. I said it again. But it is... It's kind of a strange time in our lives, and it's a great time for Dharma practice, for us to deepen our Dharma practice, because so much is going on. It was so many opportunities for us to practice and to actually see if our practice is working, and where it's not working, where we need to up it a little bit. We used to have we had the center in the basement back, I don't know, many years ago. Donna? 12 years ago or more, when it was in Jack Rice's basement, where we'd been for a long time. Anyway, you walk inside there, and there was something in gold letters. It was on the wall. It said, it was a quote from Lama Zopa saying, "Cherish problems. They are the source of all of your past and future life's happiness." So we have plenty of problems going on in the world, and I'm sure ordinarily in day-to-day life we have plenty of stuff going on too. And bodhicitta is like the coolest thing in all of Tibetan Buddhism. It's the reason that I chose Tibetan Buddhism as my path, because I thought it was so helpful for my mind. Last month, Robbie taught about refuge, and he said that Song Rinpoche, who was this great Buddhist saint who lived, in fact, I had a chance to meet him in the early 80s. He was very regal, very tall for a Tibetan. He was maybe like 6'3" or so. He had a white goatee, and he was considered to be an emanation of Chakrasamvara, who's the Buddha, a very high Sugar Tantra emanation, Haruka. Anyway, he was this great teacher, and he said that he said of all the things in Buddhism that you need to know, the two most important practices are refuge and karma. So interesting. I don't know how many people were listening to that teaching, but refuge, which is basically all the Dharma. Anytime we're going about our day-to-day life, and when we find ourselves in a problematic situation, and we look into our Dharma medicine cabinet, and we're having a problem with somebody, and we reach in there and take out the medicine called patience, and we put it into practice. That's taking refuge, isn't it? That's putting a safe, positive direction in our lives. So refuge is vast. It's the whole Dharma. It's actually utilizing the Dharma moment to moment, 24/7 in our lives. And karma is actually understanding, how the mind works in terms of causation. That every moment of every day, in fact, 60 times in a finger snap, we're creating karma, and it's either positive, negative, or neutral. And don't ask me to define neutral, because it's pretty hard. But in any case, we're planting seeds in our mind that will ripen in future happiness or suffering, based on our intention, and the state of our minds. So our karma is so important, because what goes around comes around, and right this moment, our experience of ourselves and our lives is the fruition of millions of karmic seeds ripening moment to moment as we go through this evening. So we, setting up the proper motivation, which is this Bodhi mind, the awakening mind, which, you know, I like Jeffrey Hopkins' definition. It's the altruistic intention to become enlightened based on love and compassion. So it's the altruistic intention to become enlightened based on love and compassion. And it sort of breaks down into two parts. It's like through a series of contemplative practices and study and deepening our understanding of Buddhism, of the Buddha Dharma, we develop this sincere, heartfelt wish to help others stop their suffering and find true and lasting happiness. And then we realize the second part of that is we realize that the only way to truly be able to do that is to develop ourselves, purify our own downfalls, our own negative karma, purify our limitations, and develop our qualities and become a Buddha. So that's bodhicitta. I must, in order to help others accomplish their own needs for happiness and fulfillment and so forth, we need to become a Buddha. We need to become enlightened. So, again, the altruistic intention to become enlightened based on sincere love and compassion, not sentimentality, but it's just something real, something that we actually feel in our heart of hearts. That's what bodhicitta is. So it's kind of a very cool practice, and a being who has realized that teaching in their hearts 24/7 is called a bodhisattva. And there's a lot of, we will touch on the 6 perfections, which are the practices of a bodhisattva. But those are that's kind of an intro for the video. Oh, can we do the video now? Are
you ready?
Yeah. So we're going to do a little video intro for about 30 minutes. Then we'll do a little meditation on equanimity and maybe a little bit of Tonglen, which is what the real meditation that we're going to focus on this module. Taking or giving and taking.
teachings, we have been setting an appropriate motivation. That motivation has been the wish to achieve enlightenment in order to be able to benefit all living beings and lead them to enlightenment as well. This intention, this wish, is actually the mind of bodhicitta and is known also as the mind of enlightenment. Now, bodhicitta is an attitude that is progressively developed step by step. And the very first step in that process of development is generating an appropriate motivation, a strong motivation for practice. And so before listening to these teachings, in your mind, make a strong determination to be able as quickly as possible to reach the state of Buddhahood, not for yourself alone, but in order to benefit all living beings.
Well, life, the sufferings of my and then increasing with suffering in future life and so forth until you are comfortable accepting your sufferings rapidly upon yourself. Then slowly move over to your parents, move over to your parents, move over to your kids, move over to your husband or to your wife, to your family. And then you move on once you're comfortable with that, you increase with all your friends. Once you're comfortable with that, you increase with all your enemies. Once you're comfortable with that, you increase with all the strangers, all the human beings. Then once you're comfortable with that, you increase with all the animals and so on and so forth. You gradually build up the strength of your courage and your meditation until you're able to embrace all sentient beings. So meditation of taking and giving. In Tibetan actually Stanglen means giving and taking. But from the point of view of the practice, you first take and then give. You first take upon yourself and then you give up. So once you have this, on the basis of this feeling of compassion, you begin to think that all these sufferings of the hell beings that are cold and heat, the sufferings of hunger and thirst, of the plagues and so on, each of them, or each sentient beings, begin to think that they come out of the sentient beings like a huge black cloud. And in the nature is the sufferings of the sentient beings and the causes, all those non-virtuous actions which bring as a result that type of suffering, and they just ripen on you. They just absorb right in the center of the heart, where the self-cherishing thought stays, right there, and destroys the thing that it ripens completely everything on yourself. And by doing this thing that I'm freeing all my mother's sentient beings from the sufferings that are happening upon me right now. Therefore, from now on, all my mother's sentient beings, they will dwell in the irreversible happiness, and I myself alone, I'm doing this. So generate a great joy at the end of your meditation of having been able to do and being able to do so. So at this point, once you have taken in this way gradually, then it is the moment of giving. Giving is done, taking is done on the basis of great compassion, wanting all sentient beings to be free from suffering. This is the meaning of compassion. So now you give with love. What is the meaning of love? Love, the wish of all sentient beings to be happy, to possess all the happiness, temporary and ultimate happiness that they wish for, in accordance with your desire, exactly as they desire. But by using your breath, with your visualization, mounting it with love and compassion to give and to take, it will become, it becomes quite powerful and a quick method to realize the mind of the life. There's no question in my mind that bodhicitta is the root of all, the foundation of all practices. Without bodhicitta, none of it makes any sense. It doesn't, there's any power to it, there's no juice to it. From my experience, there's no transformative effect to meditation without developing compassion. It becomes a bit dry and ineffectual. And it creates a kind of cool detachment, which I don't think was the purpose of the Buddha's work. Ultimately, the work that is achieved through the various practices is to break down all barriers. And there's no more tangible one than breaking down the barriers to having a compassionate open heart to all beings. In
insects and enemies included, to begin to approach a new kind of relationship with them, to me, really is the beginning of practice. There's a very powerful practice that, simple practice, that I started using years and years and years ago. And it was simply every creature that I met, whether it was a person, an insect, whatever it may be, the first thought that I allowed myself to generate towards their being was, I wish you happiness. Very simple fact. But make sure that the very first thought you have is, I wish you happiness. And how that totally transforms what happens after that point with this other person. This is my own experience. I see this very clearly. Now, sometimes it's extremely difficult. You're faced with an enemy. You're faced with an immediate physical situation where something is in your face. It becomes very difficult. That's where the meditative process of being able to stop the arisal of an afflictive emotion becomes really important. There's an immediate space you can create where you can see it arise, and before it actually takes you over, you're able to transform it. Okay, see it for what it is. That this is ignorance being manifest. This anger is nothing more than ignorance. My side and their side. Transform it, let it go. Transform it, turn it into love. I wish you happiness. If you just try that, what an extraordinary difference it really makes.
Giving birth is an amazing experience, and for me the pain was so intense that it really allowed my mind to focus in a way that I very rarely, if ever, can otherwise. And so during the process of birth, when a contraction would come and it would just be so intense and so painful, that was really the only time I've ever been able to practice Tonglen in a way that I felt like it was really powerful, and it was really affecting my mind, and it was the only thing that allowed my mind to get through that process. Because if I would freak out and lose concentration for a minute, the pain would just be so overwhelming I couldn't handle it. But then if I could just think of all the others out there who had either experienced that kind of pain in similar situations, or the numerous other kinds of pain that people are experiencing all the time, and I could think of trying to take on their suffering and to experience it and take it away from them in what I was feeling, it somehow helped to keep it much more focused, and it helped to keep it bearable. I got a tiny taste during that process of how powerful Tonglen can be, and how amazing. Like, if you really practice that all the time, and or as a regular daily practice even, it would just change how you view the world so much. And then I think, as a parent, you start to get a little opportunity to do that in the waking time. It's probably in practice, in being around my daughter, that's probably the only time, really, that I'll have a desire and she'll have an opposing desire, and I'll give in and do what she needs before I'll do what I need. And so it's nice to see that. And it's amazing to imagine what it would be like to have that feeling towards every other being, on the planet. And you can see some of these teachers that do have that feeling towards every being on the planet, and it's amazing.
Are we back? Okay. I should have done this earlier. Excuse me. By the way, we're all maintaining social distancing. Linda was standing on an X right over here, exactly 6 feet away from me. Just kidding. And mask and everything. We're all being careful here. So let's take a couple of minutes to. I know we don't have. Actually, we said 8. Did we say 8 o'clock was going to be done at 8 o'clock, Donna? Because we could go over a little bit.
Well, let's help us set up, but it's your choice.
All right. So maybe we might go so we can do a little meditation. To talk a little bit about it and do a little bit of meditation too. But let's start out because most of us have had a whatever kind of day we've had, it's probably been hectic at times. So let's take a few minutes and just start out with some mindfulness of the breath. And some people like to do the 9-round breathing, Geshe-la. We teach that all the time, where you breathe in one nostril and out the other 3 times, and vice versa, and then both nostrils. Or just, you can focus on the breath. Sometimes the easiest to count the breath. And so we'll just exhale 1. Silently, though. We're just silently counting. And inhale. Start out with an exhalation. An inhalation in silent 1. Exhale. Inhale, silent 2. Exhale. And inhale, silent 3, and so on up to 10. When you get to 10, you can start again. If you lose track, which is very easy to do, you gently but firmly bring your mind back to awareness of your breath. And when thoughts intrude, you just acknowledge those, let them go, and bring the mind back to the breath. Yeah, relax your awareness and bring your attention back to the wakeful present moment. Oops. That didn't work. So I could at this point see if there are any questions, but I don't think we'll do that. Well, actually, if there are any questions, I guess you could. Pardon?
People can ask them in chat either on Zoom or on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. If you have questions, by the way, you can answer them in the Zoom chat or
in the comment section on the streaming.
yeah, in the comment section. And Linda or Donna are both here. They can relay the information. So I have a couple of quotes I wanted to read, a couple of things just to start the conversation. Well, yeah. So Shantideva, most people know who Shantideva. He was this great Buddhist saint that lived over 1,000 years ago, I think. Not exactly sure. He was at Nalanda Monastery in India, though, and he said, if you churn the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha. So in Buddhism, we say there are 84,000 delusions. So there's a teaching for every delusion. So if you churn the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, the essence is bodhicitta. If you churn the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, the essence is bodhicitta. Therefore, it's extremely important to strive to achieve the uncontrived, effortless experience of bodhicitta. As Rupa Rinpoche, he was the elderly monk who gave the little teaching on Tonglen at the end. He said, the aspiration to attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings is something that is truly inconceivable, truly splendid and marvelous. Bodhicitta is the doorway to the great vehicle. That's the Mahayana vehicle. So in Tibetan, there are different kinds of Buddhism. Just to give you a little historical context, usually we think of Zen and Chan, which is practiced. Zen would be mostly Japan and Korea, and Chan Buddhism would be in China, and then Tibetan Buddhism. Those are all, and then sometime in Vietnamese Buddhism, I think has some aspects of Mahayana, where the motivation or the intention to practice is not just for one's own self-liberation. By the way, that's a great motivation, is to stop your own suffering. Nothing wrong with that. And when we can stop our own suffering, that is phenomenal, because then we can truly be of benefit to others. But the motivation from the get-go in the Mahayana tradition is to set your intention to help others. How do you do it? The method to do that is one's own enlightenment. Enlightenment, again, simply stated, is when we eliminate all of our faults, we eliminate all of our shortcomings, purify all of that, and develop our qualities to the nth degree. Develop perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, perfect kindness, loving kindness, perfect ability to know exactly what to do in every situation to benefit others. So, so it's amazing state of mind to be able to cultivate that. Very difficult state of mind, but there are methods to do that. So, the Theravada tradition is more southern tradition of Buddhism, where the motivation is individual liberation, and the goal of that is nirvana. Nirvana, sometimes usually translated as a cessation of suffering. So I've been lucky enough to practice a little bit in Thailand, and I think it's a beautiful practice. It's a wonderful practice, but they're very clear. The motivation is individual liberation, and from the get-go, in Theravada, in Mahayana Buddhism, the motivation is to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all. And certainly somebody who's achieved nirvana can be a great benefit to other people as well. So there's no, I mean, it's more than a semantic difference though, because the intention is the key thing in karma. And from the get-go, the intention in the Mahayana, the great vehicle, is to get enlightened for the benefit of all beings. So bodhicitta is more than just compassion or a good heart. It's an attitude that transforms all of our actions into the causes of enlightenment. It's an antidote to our worst enemy. So we think of we have different packages. We package the Dharma different ways. We present it in different ways. There's Lam Rim, which is there's the the different stages along the path to supreme enlightenment, and then there's the three principal aspects of the path, which we usually start out with renunciation, which is the determination to be free. Okay, so renunciation. I asked one teacher. I remember Geshe Sunam Rinchen was his name, and it was in Dharamsala, India. And I asked him, I said, it doesn't seem like Buddhism has anything in it about self-compassion, because I was really digging for that. And he said, no, it absolutely does. He said that's what renunciation is. It's actually coming to grips with the fact that we're caught up. We are suffering constantly. And we are. I mean, sometimes it's more obvious, sometimes not so obvious, but we all suffer a lot. And we're caught in this uncontrollable cycle of causation called samsara. And he said, so to recognize how that we're caught in this cycle of unsatisfactoriness and we're stuck. And when we recognize that, it's like being in jail. Like if you're in jail and you think it's just fine there, you have no particular interest in getting free. But if you realize that you're incarcerated and there's a possibility to get out, you want to be free. You want to be free. You want to get free of suffering. So this is like self-compassion. Renunciation is having compassion for yourself, this determination to be free of unsatisfactoriness, or dukkha is the Sanskrit word. And some I've heard this may be a little this may seem a little extreme, but it's sort of like realizing your hair is on fire and you want to put it out. I want to put it out. I got to stop the fire. So it's that kind of sense of urgency. You want to be free from suffering. And you have compassion for yourself. I sincerely want to stop my suffering. That's renunciation, okay? This determination to be free. Now, bodhicitta, on the other hand, is focused on others. It's focused on the suffering of other beings. It's actually focused on the suffering of universal sentient beings. So it's the compassion that we're aiming to develop when we develop bodhicitta is called universal compassion, because it excludes no sentient being. Sentient being or living being, we can think of it as any being that's capable of feeling. Sentient means capable of feeling. So, I mean, it could be anything from small, it could be even microbes. So look out about the antibiotics there. But you have to be, it could be anything, all the way up to, huge mammals. Any being that's capable of feeling. So, so the compassion that we're aiming to cultivate in the generating bodhicitta excludes no one. It excludes no one. But, we have to start out with where we are. And so it's a little bit difficult. Certainly I know some people that they have dogs that they feel closer to than their family, And when they see a dog suffer, it's like worse than, seeing humans suffer. But you get the point. It's a universal love and compassion is what we're aiming to cultivate. And then the final step of the three principal aspects of the path is emptiness, realization of seeing reality, seeing things you can say seeing reality as it is, seeing the truth of reality. And so, there's no easy answer, easy explanation to it. Well, I could make up a simple-minded explanation. Lama Yeshe used to say emptiness. Oh, that's simple. You just strip away your projections. You just strip away your projections, and what's there is reality. But not easy to do, is it? Because our life is one big projection. And our projections are coming from where? From our past action. Our karmic seeds are ripening, billions of them at a moment, forcing us to see the world a certain way. And if we're suffering, if we see ourselves as suffering, it's because of past negative karma, actions that have harmed others. So very important. Again, from the very beginning, I always emphasize in these classes to have good ethics. Don't harm yourself. Don't harm other beings. At least the 5 lay precepts, or no killing. Now I might even forget these, but I'll do my best. No killing, no stealing, no lying, adultery, or intoxicants. Okay, avoiding intoxicants. Now, you wonder, well, what's so bad about having a drink or whatever your drug of choice is? But the problem with intoxicants is that when under the effect of intoxicants, we could do the other 4 quite easily, and a lot more worse things. So, in Buddhist countries, those are generally the lay precepts. And as I remember Venerable Raja Lamazopa's attendant, he said, if we can even keep 1 precept, that's amazing. Your life will be different if you can just keep 1 precept. Keeping 2, 3, 4, or 5, phenomenal, awesome. But it's impossible to have an effective meditation practice when our mind is full of regret, and we're wincing because of things that we've done that we have regrets. So ethics is a crucial point in our meditation practice. Now we're going to, I have the emphasis of this course, which goes from today up to May 18th. I've never done this course this way. I've done this course on other occasions, but I've never emphasized Tonglen, the practice of, and it's very interesting because Rupa Rinpoche actually, Tonglen means, and I don't speak Tibetan, right? Just a few words, but it means giving and taking. And I've been reading a lot of different scriptures on, and it's often taught as taking or giving. He taught taking on the suffering, giving happiness, right? But we're going to we can practice both ways, but basically it means giving happiness. And the giving of happiness, in Buddhism we define we define love as giving happiness and the causes of happiness, okay? So if I love you, it means I want you to be happy and have the causes of happiness. And so in Tonglen, we're actually practicing giving happiness to other beings. And we start out with ourselves, by the way. Tonglen, as he was saying, usually start with yourself, then you start with your parents, and then your family members and your loved ones and your friends, and you graduate, you escalate up to strangers, and then to the hardest of all, your enemies. You try to practice with universal living beings, including animals and beings that we can't see. But so we're practicing giving love, giving. The giving part is helping us to develop loving kindness, and then we imagine these beings are suffering, and right now we can imagine. I think this is such a perfect time for us to practice Tonglen because of the COVID-19, the suffering. Just forget, and I don't want to forget about the people that have the disease right now, because they're the ones that are more intimately connected to the suffering of it. But there's a lot more mental suffering going on. The fear that we all have, the families that have been disrupted, the jobs that have been lost, the incomes that have been lost, spousal abuse and child abuse and things that are going on, and just the dismay that our whole culture and the whole world culture has been disrupted by this virus. This amazing amount of suffering. And so we can imagine, we'll do this meditation in a minute, we'll imagine all the suffering of universal living beings, and we're going to take that from them. We're going to imagine it in the form of black smoke, and we're going to take it right into our heart, and we're going to let it'll be in the form of a little black ball at that point, and it's going to destroy our selfishness, our self-cherishing, which is the biggest obstacle to our happiness, isn't it? So, so that's Tonglen, the practice that we'll be working with in a few moments. But the basis for developing universal compassion, impossible. All the bodhicitta meditations that we do, and we'll go through, there are two streams of teachings of developing bodhicitta. One comes from Atisha, the Lama Zopa mentioned it, the Mahayana 7 cause and effect meditation. It ends up in developing bodhicitta, seeing all sentient beings as mother. And then there's the exchange of self and others, which is more profound. And actually, it's more profound because it's really involves some kind of understanding of emptiness at some level to get the full benefit of it. But it also is, Tonglen is the principal practice in exchanging self with others. So these two come together, and there are 13 points that we meditate on, and the final point is development bodhicitta. So we'll practice those during the course of this particular course. But I want to start out with just a couple of minutes. Like I said, so important to have equanimity, because if we have a biased attitude, bodhicitta is the wish to become enlightened in order to benefit all living beings. Not just my friends, not just the people that I'm close to, but all universal living beings, which includes, of course, our friends and family and people that we're close to, but it includes strangers, which makes up the vast majority of beings, including animals and small insects and even spirits and things that we cannot see, but maybe we can at least creatively align that they may exist. And then the people that we actually feel aversion toward. Okay? So if we're biased, if we feel aversion towards some, indifference toward these beings that we label as strangers, and sort of attachment toward the friends, well, that's not what we're looking for. We need to start out with the level surface called equanimity. So, there are different ways to develop that, but it may be the simplest way to do it is to realize that these are all. So just for a moment, we'll do a couple of minutes of equanimity meditation, just about 2 or 3 minutes of this. So just kind of sit quietly, still, back straight. If you're sitting on a chair or a cushion, your arms can be on your thighs or in your lap. Take a few deep cleansing breaths and settle in. So we can, in your mind's eye, you can visualize these 3 categories of beings, and this particular kind of equanimity that we're trying to develop is equanimous appreciation for all kinds of beings, equal regard for all kinds of beings. So we start out with a friend. And again, and we imagine the friend to our left, a stranger in front of us, some faceless person that you might have seen in an elevator back when you used to get in elevators, or just driving down the highway. And to the right is somebody that you, just the sight of him, you feel even the thought of the sight of him causes aversion to rise in the mind. And then so we just look at these three categories of beings and focus on the being that, and realize that these are just merely label beings. We label the friend because they've been kind to us, right? They said something nice, they treated us with respect, or at least most of the time, and but it's not a fixed relationship. Could change at any moment. Very changeable. And we can also remember in past lives that everybody, friend, stranger, and enemy, they've all been like family, like our mother. They've all treated us with extreme kindness. But we don't remember that far back. But in the teachings we talk about that, how all living beings, sentient beings, have been like family. But again, looking at the friend, we have attachment to the friend because of some things that happened, and we label them friend, and we cling to that label, but it's really not fixed. It could change. We could get in an argument, and that person could be flipped over from best friend to worst enemy in just a matter of a second, couldn't it? So it's not fixed. The stranger, all living beings, all of our present friends and enemies were at one time or another in that category of strangers that we feel indifference towards. So that's not fixed either. That's just a label. And again, in past lifetimes, they've all been family, like our mother. They've been kind to us. They might have been mean to us too, but the relationship that dominates, that is most prevailing, is the one in which that being was kind to us. And then the so-called enemy, we think of that person as like, we label them enemy. It's a fixed label, and we feel instantly, just seeing them, the mind like pushes them away. We feel aversion toward this being that we label enemy. And again, just a label, just a few kind words, an apology, just a sincere apology could change an enemy into at least a neutral being, and potentially even a friend. So it's not fixed. And again, this is somebody who's been kind to us in past lifetimes, and we often talk about how these beings that we label enemies are like in some sense, they're our greatest teachers because they point out our faults. They point out areas where we need to work on ourselves. They teach us patience. And any suffering that we experience at the hands of a so-called enemy or person we label as an enemy or a person of aversion, any negativity that we experience as a result of that relationship is of our own past. It's from our past karma. It's our own past actions of harming that are coming back to us, and this being is just a vehicle by which our karma is returning to us. So that label is not so fixed. So we try to, as much as we can, let go of this fixed notion of an enemy, okay, and see them the friend, stranger, and enemy in a more equanimous fashion. Now, with just for a moment, just try to let that sink in. Having equal regard for the friend, the stranger, and the enemy. Again, any effort to develop universal compassion, which is the goal of our practice, the foundation of that is equanimity. Otherwise, compassion, right now, who do we have compassion for? Our friends, the people that we feel close to. But that when somebody who we dislike suffers, what might happen? We actually might rejoice. We actually might rejoice in others' suffering. So seeing, experiencing suffering alone is not the cause for compassion to arise. There has to be that sense of affection, a connection and affection for us to wish them to be free of suffering. So it's so important. That's why the next little meditation we're going to continue, we're going to roll with this for another couple of minutes, is to imagine that we're not going to start with ourselves this time. We're going to focus on ourselves, universal living beings, which includes us. We imagine that we're now surrounded by universal living beings, and who are all in human form, and we're going to imagine that they're all experiencing the fear of this COVID-19 virus. By the way, Lama Zopa's really strongly encouraged us to practice Tonglen during this time of this virus has sort of gotten into everybody's head and heart. So we imagine universal beings, and everybody's fearful, afraid they're going to get it, afraid somebody's going to give it to them, or if they have it, they're going to give it to somebody else. So many people have already lost loved ones. So many people have lost their livelihood. They're afraid, like, where's my next meal coming from? How am I going to take care of my family? People in hospitals now are literally fighting for their lives on ventilators. I mean, it's just pervasive. The suffering, the mental and physical suffering caused by this virus. So we imagine that all of this, in the form of all the suffering of universal living beings, all these beings that are suffering on account of COVID-19, imagine that this all begins to lift away from these beings that are suffering, the beings in the hospital that are on ventilators. All of a sudden, they're cured. They're no longer have to be on the ventilators anymore. The viruses are gone. All the suffering associated with it, mental and physical, it rises in the form of black smoke, and we'll take about 5 or 6 breaths, and we'll breathe it in the left nostril. We're going to breathe in all the suffering of universal beings caused by COVID-19, which include us, right? We imagine that we're going to breathe it in. I don't want you to breathe it completely into your left nostril. Breathe that black smoke right up to just till it's outside your nostril, okay? We'll just take about 5 or 6 breaths and gradually imagine, be very vivid and clear about what you're doing. It's really important that you you imagine that you're taking the suffering away from these beings that are just like you, want to be happy, don't want to suffer, but are suffering. And now we're going to imagine that all of this suffering, all this black smoke begins to come compressed and it gets smaller and smaller, but it's still the same amount of suffering, but it becomes like the size of maybe a pea. All of the suffering of universal living beings, mental and physical, caused by COVID-19, and it's about an inch outside our left nostril. And we imagine that our heart is this flame. There's a beautiful lotus, but on this lotus is this flame. And there's this flame is the flame of self-cherishing selfishness. The cause of all of our problems. The cause of all the suffering in the world, from beginningless time until this moment, is the cause of this self-cherishing selfishness. And so in a moment we're going to breathe in all the suffering caused by COVID-19, and as we do, that black ball of light, smoke, but it's condensed, it's going to come down and meet with the flame and poof, completely disappear. It like smoke, like somebody, it's like cigarette smoke, kind of, but it completely dissipates. And when we do that, we'll imagine our self-cherishing is gone and the suffering of COVID-19 is gone. So imagine again that at our heart is this lotus with the flame of self-cherishing. And when you're ready, and you don't have to do this. This is something it's a very powerful practice, the practice of compassion, taking on the suffering of others. So when you're ready, on the next inhalation, breathe in that black ball orb of COVID-19 suffering. Comes down to our heart and just completely, instantly dissipates into a puff of smoke, and the light of selfishness disappears as well. And we imagine that our body is completely full of the light of loving kindness, and all these beings, universal living beings, are now completely freed of COVID-19, completely freed of all the physical and mental suffering associated with it. And now as we exhale out the right nostril, we exhale this beams of white light, this light of loving kindness, where we're giving not only our happiness, all the happiness that the causes of our future happiness, all the positivity that we've ever created, we're giving that away to universal living beings, all the causes for health and happiness. It's going out to universal living beings as these beams of white light. You can imagine with each exhalation, the light goes a little further out. And do that about 5 or 6 breaths, and as you imagine the light, imagine that it dissipates and it goes to universal living beings. And it goes in their right nostril. Their right nostril. And they breathe it into their bodies, and their bodies and minds are full of this light of loving kindness. They're actually it's going in their left nostril, sorry. So we breathe out the light of loving kindness out our right nostril, and it enters their left nostril and completely fills them with the healing light of loving kindness. And so it's important, even though we're using our mind to do this practice, this is a kind of mind training. You go, well, nothing's changed. And people still sick, people still afraid. Like nothing's really changed, but something has changed. Our mind has changed. Because we just practiced, compassion, the action of compassion, which is taking on others' suffering. And we practiced the action of loving kindness, which is giving happiness and its causes. So maybe you think nothing's changed, but we've changed. And as we change our mind and actually achieve enlightenment, then we truly can be a benefit to others. We truly can have profound impact on other beings when we become enlightened. And yes. So you can just relax your attention back into the present moment. And so we're gonna use Tonglen. That's gonna be we'll do all the different meditations, the steps in developing bodhicitta, but we're gonna spend a lot of time in this course practicing Tonglen. And by the way, I remember one Lama, two answers to this question, well, what happens if I get sick practicing Tonglen? I might get sick imagining that I'm taking on others' suffering. Somebody asked a Tibetan Lama that one time. I can't remember who he was. And he thought, fantastic, amazing, so great that you could take on somebody else's suffering. And they would be free of suffering and you would suffer, but they wouldn't. He thought that was great. And so this is one of the methods. Whenever we suffer, it is a way of purifying negative karma. And so one of the things that we can do when we experience suffering is to, in Tonglen practice, we're practicing taking on others' suffering. So when we suffer, we might think, wow, not only am I purifying past negative karma, but now my Tonglen practice is actually working. I'm actually taking on the suffering of others. This gal who's I don't know her, I've never met her, but who was in labor and was talking about the suffering of labor, how she was practicing Tonglen. What she was imagining was that she was taking on all the pain, not only of other women who were going through labor at that time, but all the physical pain of all living beings as she was going through the labor pains. And that helped her develop compassion, right? And then she was practicing giving them happiness and freedom from pain and suffering like that. So such a bodhicitta, and this practice of Tonglen is so powerful, so helpful for our minds. So didn't see any questions popping up. So why don't we we'll just do some, we're just going to do we're not going to do any prayers of dedication, but we always want to set our motivation at the beginning, as Venerable Connie in the video had talked about, setting our motivation to be the altruistic intention to become enlightened, or bodhicitta. At the end of any virtuous action, we want to dedicate collectively, not only the positive merit, virtuous karma that we've created by listening and doing these practices, but everybody who's participated in this class, either in person or online or wherever, we want to dedicate whatever merit we've created individually and collectively to all living beings, and specifically to the end of this COVID-19 virus is causing so much difficulty and suffering in the world. We want to dedicate it, and also eventually to our ability to achieve full enlightenment in order to be able to liberate all beings. So just for a moment, you can imagine that we're sending out this light from our heart, which is dedicating all of that energy. Okay, so thank you. Thank
Don.
you everyone who made the effort to show up virtually and in person, and this next week I would like for, yeah?
We have a question.
Oh, we have a
It's
question.
a quick question.
All right.
It's from one of the folks who are on Zoom with us.
Yeah.
They want to know, between medicine Buddha practice, green Tara practice, and Tonglen, given we only have so much time, or we only make so much time, which do you recommend and how to prioritize?
That's a great question. Do we have time? Okay, I'll give you a quick answer. The most important practice this sounds a little radical, okay? But and one of my teachers said this, the most important meditation in all of Buddhism is Tonglen.
And
It's the
Don,
most important to teach in the beginning. It's the most important to teach in the end. And when you're doing medicine Buddha practice or green Tara practice, when you're actually doing the mantra, you're actually practicing Tonglen. Mentally, without giving away, this is talk. I also teach the class on Introduction to Tantra, so I can say this much. Tonglen is the critical practice in Vajrayana. It's like such an important practice. It's part of every Vajrayana sadhana. When you're doing the mantra recitation and you're sending out, light and energy, healing, and bringing on suffering of others, you're practicing Tonglen no matter what you're doing in Vajrayana as well as in the development of bodhicitta like we're doing now. So I would say at this point, you have to keep your commitments. But you can do, even if you do Tonglen for just a minute or two a day, this is a good start. We'll talk more about it as the course goes on. But good question. Good question. Yeah.
and I forgot that I'm talking through the microphone for streaming, so in the future we'll need to remember for you to repeat the question for those who are on Zoom. But I think in your answer it was clear what the question was.
Also, this next week, I would like for people to take 5 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you're comfortable with. Of course, start out by doing some mindfulness of the breath until you can settle your mind down, and then do this practice of equanimity, of letting go of attachment, practicing letting go of attachment for the friend, this letting go of this feelings of indifference to the stranger, and letting go of aversion toward the so-called enemy, and trying to develop this mind of equanimity. Do this practice over the next week. Particularly focus on the person you feel aversion to. I find that practice so helpful for my mind, so helpful. So just give the practice of equanimity most of your time this week. If you get a moment you want to do Tonglen, that's fine. We'll have plenty of opportunities to do that in the weeks to come. Thank you.